Hey, what's going on, Spice Heads? Thank you guys so much for joining us. We have another great expert roundtable. This is going to be a great panel, guys. I'm really excited about this one. We've just all been hanging out, having a good time, waiting for you guys to get here. So here we are. We're here to talk all about multi-layered security today, and including what that means and what you guys need to know about it. So for more on this, got a great panel of experts from some of your favorite security vendors in the community, including Kaspersky, Alien Vault, KnowBe4, Malwarebytes, and Varonis. So without further ado, let's start off with a round of introductions so you guys can meet our panel of experts. Batting first, coming to us from Alien Vaults, Mr. Garrett Gross. Garrett, how's it going today, man?
Hey, Justin, going great. Thanks a lot for having me. My name is Garrett Gross. I run a team called Field Enablement here at Alien Vault, and we provide all technical support for our managed services partners.
Wonderful. And now, Garrett, do all Alien Vault employees have a giant inflatable alien in their office, or is that just you?
Yeah, we're not really supposed to talk about it. It's more of a surveillance thing. Make sure we're doing it.
Now, does the alien have a name, or is it just?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So we did a poll with the community, and I think the one that we decided on was AV, as in AV.
Nice. I like it. I like it. Now, Garrett, where are you calling us today from? Where are you guys based out of?
So Alien Vault is based out of San Mateo, California, but we are calling you from beautiful Austin, Texas.
All right. Nice to meet you, Garrett. Thanks so much for joining us. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Our next panelist is representing Kaspersky. Please welcome Mr. Andrei Pojogin. Andrei, how's it going today?
Very good, thanks.
Andrei, can you tell us about yourself and your role with Kaspersky?
Come again?
Sorry, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role with Kaspersky?
Yeah, thanks. Name's Andrei Pazhogin. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at Kaspersky, also green guy on Spiceworks. So whenever you have questions on Spiceworks, I'm here with my colleague Charlie to answer any of those.
All right, very cool. Andrei, where are you calling us from?
We're just north of Boston.
In Boston?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And Andrei, you don't have a giant inflatable alien with you. Where's Kaspersky's mascots? Did you bring any with you today?
It's not here, but I have a replacement. It's a malware.
That's a malware. Great. Thanks so much for joining us today, Andrei. Our next panelist is representing Malwarebytes. Everyone, please welcome Ken Liao to the show. Ken, how's it going today?
Great, thanks, Justin. So hello, everyone. My name is Ken Liao from Malwarebytes. I lead the product marketing function here. And we actually have a giant robot that if you ever come to us and see us at a trade show, it's a sizable, I don't know, something like an 8-foot robot that people take selfies with all the time.
That's awesome. And speaking of, where's your office based out of, Ken?
We're based out of Santa Clara, California, which is where I am calling you from today.
Cool. And then what is your role with Malwarebytes?
I lead the product marketing function here.
Very cool. Thanks so much for joining us, Ken. Looking forward to hearing from you. Our next panelist is from Varonis. Please welcome Mr. Rob Sobers. Rob, how's it going today?
Hey guys, yeah, I'm doing very well, and I'm coming to you from New York City, and I'm on the product and technical marketing team here at Varonis. I've been here for about 5 years, and we make products that help secure your data center data, your files and emails that sit in your data center from insider threats and cyber attacks. So thank you for having me today.
you have not popped that open, I think it's open by default. If you closed it, because you're not a nice person, open it back up and say hi to folks. And everyone loves hanging out, seeing where people are and what they think about the show that we're talking about. So definitely pop in and say hi to folks. But most importantly is the Q&A widget, which looks like Q&A. And we're going to be taking as many questions as we can get to our panel. So if you have any questions for our panel, make sure to get it in that Q&A widget. Some folks get tricky and they like to put it in chat, thinking I'm seeing it. I'm not always in chat, so make sure if you want to get that question asked to put that in that Q&A widget. We've also got a lot of really great resources from each of our vendors today, so make sure to check out everything that we've got up there. And last but not least, as a special thank you for hanging out with us today, if that were not enough, in addition to all the wonderful knowledge you guys are about to acquire, one of you guys is going to be walking away with something called a Cosmo AI-enabled robot. I have no idea what that is. Emily picked it. I assume that's something that you guys told her to buy. So I bet it's probably something really cool. So good luck to all you guys. We're going to be announcing the winner of that Cosmo AI-enabled robot at the end of our show. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with this first question from Garrett, and then Rob, maybe we'll get to you next. But we're here today to talk about multi-layered security. Now, this is something that a lot of marketers and security experts alike seem to be pushing these days. Garrett, what exactly is multi-layered security? What are kind of the different layers? And is that not, how is that different than kind of the traditional way that people may have been approaching security?
Yeah, great question. So to me, multi-layered security is just considering all attack vectors, all endpoints, all pieces of contextual information you can grab from your environment to let you know what's going on. I'm a huge believer in endpoint protection. I'm a huge believer in next-gen firewall technology. But what I don't believe in is putting all your eggs in one basket and just kind of burying your head in the sand and thinking that that's going to keep all the bad guys out. I'd say for 95% of your pedestrian threats, stuff that we know a lot about, that's what endpoint protection keeps, out of our environment, as well as some of the 0 days that we can grab signatures on. But for attacks that we're not, aware of, having behavioral analytics, contextual information, just other pieces of data to supplement hey, something anomalous is happening in your environment, you might want to go check this out. Just giving that awareness is key here, especially when most of us that are in security, security is not the only thing that we do. We have 10 other things that are going on in addition to securing the environment.
All right, Rob, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm with Garrett in that you don't want to put your eggs in one basket. I think of the layers as sort of like starting with the humans, right? And training your users to be smart about security. And then once the human layer inevitably fails, you have to have perimeter defense and endpoint defense all the way down through the network and inspecting traffic. And then, of course, at the data layer, which is kind of where Varonis sits, is, look at the activity on that actual data. Do the right people have access? Are you monitoring what those people are doing with the data? Because let's face it, a lot of the biggest breaches we hear about these days stem from insider threats. People who have been employees of a company for 10 years and have rightful access to data, but the company had really no way to detect that they've gone rogue or that their account's been compromised by an external hacker that was able to get in through a phishing email. So it's important to have different defense mechanisms at each layer, and it's good to kind of piece different products together, ones that specialize at each layer. So if one fails, you have backup.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, one of the reasons why it seems like there's this push for having security at each of these layers, like we've been talking about, is just because historically the focus has been on the perimeter. Andre, we'll start with Andre, and then maybe Eric will go to you next. I mean, is that because is that just because like organizations should just be expecting a breach at this point? What's kind of the reasoning behind assuming that the perimeter is at some point going to be compromised?
Yeah, well, first, there is no such thing as perimeter anymore, right? It's like it's all blurred. But yeah, absolutely, any company should expect the perimeter will be breached, all the filters will fail, all the in-place will click the links and launch executables, pre-execution will fail, post-execution will fail. Every single layer of protection will eventually fail, right? Whatever you have, your best of breed backups will fail, everything will fail. So that's why by organizing different layers, you're like minimizing chance to fall into that trap. But also you have to think like in terms, what if everything eventually fails? What is my reaction is going to be? Because this ultimately dictates the period of time you're going to be offline, the period of time you're going to be operating in complicated conditions, right? And if you have answers now, even if you didn't experience
supplement that with intelligence from other vendors. That's really the key that we're advocating, and something that I've found to be proven time and time again to be the only solution for those folks that are the security team of one or less, as we like to call it.
One or less. That's a great way to put it. And kind of going back to Eric's point, let's go to our first question. This one, and I feel like this comes up literally every time. This one comes from Preston SF, and he's asking, how do you get management on board for user training? Eric, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I can definitely do that. That can be a challenge. It can definitely be a challenge. It's getting a little easier for us now that some of the leadership's getting in trouble when these breaches occur. But ultimately, once you have to have a good ability to have conversations with them. And from a security guy's standpoint, we also need to be able to speak their language a little bit. We need to think about it from the business side. And we also need to, we need to make them aware of the threats that are going on. I've seen a lot of organizations where they'll put together like a newsletter, an email newsletter, and start sending that out. And it may not hit, the first time, but after a couple of times, people start looking at that, and they start sticking in their head, and they start going, well, maybe that could be us, or, and inform them when something happens in your similar industry or something like that. And your leadership is eventually going to go, I don't want that to be me. And that's a great way to do it from there. Once you have them going, I don't want it to be me, you got their checkbook open.
Let's go to Rob next. Rob, what's been your experience as far as getting management, and how much does that differ from users? Because we're getting a question from Ben Setliff about getting users on board for user training.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of getting management buy-in for security as a whole, whether it be user training or to buy a product that you think you need, I think it's more of a show not tell type of thing. One of the things we advocate here at Varonis is, everyone that's looking to solve the problems that we solve, we say, let's run the product for 30 days. We'll take a snapshot of your environment and the risks involved. And, in business terms, like the risk, right? How many important data assets are literally open to everyone in the company on day one? And let's trend that over 30 days and see, just from a very high level, maybe 6 KPIs, how well we can do over the 30 days in terms of reducing our risk surface area. And then you kind of build an executive report and put it in front of them and get 30 minutes of their time, and then kind of pitch it and say, look, this is where we were, this is where we are after 30 days. Imagine not having, this capability and backsliding. You can argue the same thing for measuring instances of phishing attacks, right? If you're trying to argue for phishing defense or end user training, and just really my advice is to go to the data, right? Try and get some kind of measurable, tangible information in front of the executives so that they can see it. And, especially a CFO is going to think in those terms rather than, oh, we just need it because we need it because everybody has it because you could be the next breach. Theoretical, I find, isn't as powerful as data.
Right, cool. I wanted to talk next. We've got a question from Jane Negron, who I believe is Josue, who's been on our show before. Josue, what's going on, buddy? Who's asking about protecting cloud endpoints and specifically CASB providers. Let's start with Andre. What recommendations do you have as far as protecting endpoints with cloud interfaces, and how much does something like a CASB really help protect potential break-ins?
Yeah. So cloud is everything, right? So when we say cloud, every one of us means so many different things, and sometimes staying cloud means the management is in the cloud, so you have a management console which controls how your security is set up on premises. Sometimes when you say cloud, you might mean the cloud architecture, and you actually mean like video streaming or something like that, when the endpoint is actually sits in the cloud. So depending on that, your approach to security will be obviously different. Sometimes it's a virtualized environment, and you might not want to have the conventional security solution protecting your virtualized machine. Sometimes it's just rent a desktop off the cloud, right? And you might argue that the attack vectors and the threat landscape for those is completely different from what you might have in Office. So again, this goes back to what is your how do you perceive your risks, and how do you assess your risks, and then you start building from that. Because the ideal security is, let's take our computers offline, right, and nothing's going to happen eventually. But once you start putting your computers online, you'll keep introducing new risks willingly or unwillingly. And
knocking down the number they get through. Eventually, some of them get to the users, and hopefully your users don't click. Well, that's a good thing. If they do and they launch something, then you have to have your, endpoint protection is going to help you out there, maybe not. And last but not least, your backups if things go horribly wrong. All of those things have to be in place. And if you start removing any one of those, you're just opening yourself up to, all kinds of problems on those other layers.
Mm-hmm. All right. I've got a question from, let me pull this up. It is from, this is a good one from Percussive Maintenance, and he's asking about multi-factor authentication on VPN. Do you feel that SMS text verification is still secure enough for the second factor? Why don't we start with Ken? Do you have any thoughts on that as far as multi-factor authentication?
Yeah, well, I certainly think multi-factor authentication should be almost a default for pretty much everything that we're doing today. It surprises me that people haven't taken that additional step. I think text messages do suffice as at least a minimum viable second factor there. But there's also simple tools to integrate like Google's Authenticator and whatnot that are also fairly simple. We're all carrying around smart devices these days, and that makes it fairly easy to implement. But I think the simple answer is yes, we need to enable second factor authentication with pretty much everything that we do. I'm surprised that we're not.
Mm-hmm. And SMS, you do feel though, because I've heard that is so easy to spoof now that it's actually.
It is, although I would say because of the number of instances where people have not even enabled that multi-factor already, even taking that SMS step is a great first step, right? I mean, you're sort of eliminating that low-hanging fruit, even though it's I would personally recommend something like the Authenticator from Google as a better approach to that. But certainly having SMS is better than not at all.
Okay. Cool. Andre, do you agree? What are your thoughts on SMS as a 2FA or MFA factor?
Yeah. So first of all, we'll check if that feedback came from me, the robotic voice. Probably not. But yeah, I agree. So again, it depends on the risk you're playing against, right? If you have just a random hacker looking for a low-hanging fruit and quick monetization, totally, every single thing you would put in place will significantly raise your chances to get away from that threat, right? If you are playing against a highly motivated attacker who's targeting specifically you, two-factor authentication, sometimes, sometimes those attackers can even cooperate with the means of how you get those SMS and stuff. Right, so if you have an APT playing against you, this might help less, but generic case with the vast majority of the attacks, this will significantly increase your security by just doing that.
All right, cool. Now, one of the kind of technologies or trends that seems to be emerging, within the field of security is this idea that that events and just kind of behavior can be kind of tracked overall to kind of start to look for malicious activity or behavior. Rob, what can you guys tell us about maybe some of the stuff that you guys are doing or have seen work as far as some of this analytics?
Sure. If you think about it, like the credit card industry was kind of a pioneer here. It's hard to imagine that we would ever have a bank or a credit card without a transaction log, without a history of what people are doing, when, from where, pattern analysis to see if someone's purchasing something in New York and then, a half an hour later in California. They've been kind of the pioneers of this behavioral analysis to detect when things are anomalous or perhaps risky or threatening. And so, at Varonis, we kind of do the same thing, but for your data, right? So building behavioral baselines of how users in your accounting department typically use data. And even though they might have legitimate access to it, is it suspicious that they're accessing that data in certain patterns that are vastly different than how they might have accessed it for the past 2.5 years or 6 months? And then you can kind of build these threat models that can do a really good job at determining whether someone is really it's really them or their account being compromised, or whether it's them kind of getting ready to resign tomorrow, so they're deleting a bunch of emails and to cover their tracks and maybe taking some files with them, like we saw with Google and Uber recently, with that one employee that went over to Uber from Google and took a whole bunch of intellectual property, and now there's a big lawsuit. So looking at people's access patterns with respect to data is kind of where we see the opportunity these days.
All right, Garrett, what about you guys? As far as, how does something like SIM help to kind of look at and organize some of this behavior in a way that brings meaning and hopefully can alert us to some of the stuff we wouldn't normally see?
Yeah, we get questions around this quite a bit, and I'm a firm believer
in order to kind of make sure folks are ensuring good security practices.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the how often they're changing too. So we've got, we each have probably, a dozen systems that we're accessing. So each of those requires authentication, and then we're changing them every 90 days. And so the variations there certainly get to be, things that you can't keep track of. And so to Eric's point, I'm a big fan of password management systems as well, and that helps with sort of the management of all those. Because the other issue that we run into with a lot of users is they'll use the same password for multiple systems. And everything from a low priority, their Gmail account is protected with the same password that their corporate credentials are. And so once you find something breached from a password perspective on one system, the amount of exposure that you have at that point is really rampant. And this is what's also helpful with having a password management solution, making sure that we're using individual types of passwords for each one of these. The other one that helps tremendously in a corporate environment is leveraging a single sign-on solution. And that way, you can kind of provide very strong authentication into that initial system, but then you can kind of have these launch off points into various applications that you're trying to access without having to think about, oh, well, I've got, now that it's 90 days to change my password, did I change my Salesforce password at the same time I changed my CRM password or my my backend system's password? And so it just kind of really makes that whole process a lot simpler if you can combine the single sign-on with a password management solution.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, let's go ahead and take another question. This is another one from Percussive Maintenance. Andre, we'll start with you, and then maybe Garrett, after you can take this one. But he's asking, how do you incorporate BYOD as part of a multi-layer security strategy?
So BYOD is, challenging question both technologically and legally, because basically when you have a BYOD policy, you are working with somebody else's device, right? So you're allowing your information to flow beyond your perimeter. That's why I said the perimeter is no longer there, right? And you're putting your company information to somebody else's device. So first question is actually not a technological question, but a legal question. If something happens, the employee quits, so the device is lost or stolen, what are you going to do? Are you legally allowed to touch that information on that device anymore? So some people get around that, or some companies try to get around that by having the employee sign the agreement that the phone will be wiped in case it's lost or stolen. Then comes technological questions like, if you do wipe the phone, are you wiping the corporate partition that has your email and documents in there, or are you wiping the whole device, right? Then comes the people question. What if I'm an employee and I sit there in the office and it's 12 p.m. and I'm trying to find my phone and it's not there? So I'm thinking, did I leave my phone back home? Do I go to my administrator? Do I tell my administrator right now my phone is not in my pocket? And what they're going to do? Are they going to erase that phone? And will I come back home tonight and find a brick there that I'll have to set up again? So many questions are in play, and you really have to, if you are firm on deciding to have BYOD policy, you need to kind of think this through the whole life of the corporate-enabled device, if you wish, and lay it out and see where and what may go wrong, and have this addressed legally, technically, or through education.
Mm-hmm. All right. Garrett, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I second exactly what Andre says. You need to make a decision at the corporate level whether or not you're going to do that. And if you do, you need to have processes in place to protect yourself if something were to go wrong with that device that they bring in. In addition to that, obviously segmenting your network away from these devices that, or the areas that these devices can connect to. If you're in healthcare, PHI, if you're in taking payment, payment card stuff, and also just realize that that's not a necessity all the time to have people bring their devices into the network. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell people not to connect their cell phones to the corporate network, But if, it's a case where you potentially would have access to sensitive information, maybe you just shouldn't have that as a part of your organization.
Mhm. Cool. And kind of on these lines, I've got a question, a really good one from ZMark513. Let's go ahead and have Rob answer this one first, and then maybe we'll get Eric next. How does our tool set need to evolve to tackle the identity and data security problems when our user identities and data move back and forth between cloud apps, on-premise app, device, endpoints, etc.? Where do we need to go from here, I guess?
Yeah, I think that is a
would also argue that most of the things are easily preventable, and your best bet is always to prevent something rather than dealing with the consequences of stuff, right? And as far as we are called AV company, I would always argue that you should even take away that part of gambling, taking the decision of allowing to run something or not allowing to run something through the filters. If you know the URL is malicious, if you have anti-spam on your server, you don't really have to allow stuff to be downloaded on your machine and then running it through statistical analysis, like sandboxes and stuff. You don't have to take that gamble either. You can prevent a lot of stuff before it hits the workstation. You don't have to, you can educate your users, but you don't have to gamble with their, mindset today if they're having a good day or bad day on clicking on something. Mm-hmm. So always try to shift stuff from dealing with consequences to preventing as much as possible.
Okay. All right, we got time for one more question before we wrap up. And this one came out a lot, and a lot of folks are asking about, speaking of WikiLeaks, about the Vault 7 tools release from WikiLeaks. This was obviously the tool set that enables iPhones to be basically commandeered as surveillance devices. What do you guys think are the ramifications of this, and how does this change the way that we should be approaching security? Maybe we'll start with Andre, and we'll go to Rob next, and if anyone else has anything to add, you guys can feel free to chime in after that.
Okay, so let me a little bit steer away from the question you asked, and hopefully you'll see why I'm bringing this example. But we were speaking at a panel about ransomware, and probably halfway through, people started asking questions from the audience. It's like, do you think ransomware can do this? Do you think ransomware can do that? Do you think ransomware is able of pulling this through? And eventually we said that everything you might think of now, however fantastic it sounds, will eventually happen with ransomware. And if you are tracking the ransomware behavior, you will know that the ransomware hasn't evolved of having a lot of different characteristics, and there is no single reliable indicator of compromise. Because these days, ransomware doesn't even have to open files to read them. It just can use the archive program on your machine to put the files on the in the password-protected archives. Same with, you don't have to encrypt the hard drive, you just can encrypt the master boot record and stuff like that, right? Ransomware doesn't even have to have the administrative password. So the same goes for every single other attack vector or threat. iPhone is, I like somebody said that, iPhone is a computer that happened to make calls, right? Your Apple TV is a computer that happened to show you videos. Your router is a computer that just happened to sit in your home and be IoT device. The same goes for CCTV camera, which suddenly starts, DDoSing your bank. So anything that is a computer can be exploited, used, and that's why you put in those layers of protection. Because once a cybercriminal owns your camera or router or Apple TV or your smart TV or your fridge, they'll think of the ways of using that and monetizing that. If you are government and you created those tool sets to hack people's devices and turn those devices into surveillance cameras, you can bet that earlier or sooner or later, this will get leaked and will get used against you, against your citizens, against other countries. So it'll just go out of the hands, and you can bet on that.
All right. Rob, what are your thoughts? Anything to add to that as far as the Vault 7 leak?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's enough evidence now where you could just assume that the worst case scenario is going to happen. And kind of the best personal security advice that I've heard in a while is just write every text message and email as if it were a blog post, right? Just assume that it's going to be default public at some point. Every photo, everything, basically everything digital can be compromised, and it may be compromised. So if you operate under that assumption, I know it's not possible to do that always. You're always going to have trade secrets and stuff that you do want to keep secure. But if you always have that mindset, then when you hear about these government surveillance programs, you can rest a little bit easier. So it's just crazy because we've spent the past 25, 30 years putting everything we care about online, moving things from the analog space to the digital space, our photos, our banking, everything. And security really hasn't kept up, right? We just wanted to make sure things worked, and we were excited about the
security a real business problem, not an IT problem.
All right, cool. And Rob, final thoughts from you.
Sure. Thanks again for having me. Piggybacking on what the other guys were saying, education is key, and we have a beginner's guide to layered security. If you just Google layered security guide, you'll find it. And if you have junior security people that are, or even non-security people, maybe some executives that just want to understand, like, what are the layers of that we need to worry about, from the human to the physical layers of just, what locks and surveillance systems do you have in your buildings, all the way up through the application, and then finally to the data layer. It's an easy, plain English guide to understand this stuff. So check that out. And then if data security is a place where you feel like you have gaps, you could check out our risk assessment, and it's free, 30 days, and kind of find where your sensitive data is in your data center, see who's got access to it, who shouldn't have access to it, and what they're doing with it. So take advantage of that as well.
Great. All right, thanks guys. Thanks again to everyone for hanging out with us. It is the time to announce the winner of our prize. So the winner of the drone that I can't remember the name of is going to go to Mr. Rob Rosenhammer, aka Rob P. Rose. Congratulations, Rob. You are the winner of the Cosmo AI enabled robot, not a drone, I apologize. Congratulations, Rob. Be sure to send Emily a private message in the community. Let her know where you would like that robot shipped. I'm not sure if the robot delivers itself or if we still need to ship that to you, but either way, we will need an address. I want to thank all of our panelists again, Andre, Garrett, Eric, Ken, and Rob. It was really fun hanging out with you guys. This was a really good conversation. Hope you guys had a good time too.
Cool.
And looking forward to the next time that we get to do this. But until next time, guys, make sure to check out all the other events that we got coming up by clicking on that orange button that says see all of our upcoming shows. And hope to see you around at the next one. But until then, y'all stay safe and keep it spicy. See you guys back here next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.